There are houses at night that feel so quiet you can hear the refrigerator humming from the next room. Not exactly scary, just heavy. It is not the dark that gets to people, not the lamp left on in the kitchen, not even the single plate sitting on the table after dinner. It is something else, something harder to explain. A person sits alone in their own home and suddenly thinks, did I really live my life, or did I just go through it? Somewhere in Ohio, there is probably an old man doing exactly that tonight, late 70s, sitting in the same recliner he has used for years. The clock in the kitchen ticks so loudly because there is nothing left to compete with it. His wife has been gone 3 winters now. One son lives in Texas, a daughter somewhere near Chicago. Everybody calls when they can. Everybody sounds rushed. Every evening he heats up the same frozen soup. Not because he loves it. Cooking a full meal for one person starts to feel sad after a while. The TV stays on most of the day. A lot of older people do that. Not really to watch anything, just to hear another voice in the room, to make the house feel less abandoned. But loneliness is not even the part that hurts him the most. The worst part comes later, usually after midnight, when the house settles, when there is no distraction left. That is when the thoughts start showing up. How many years did I spend rushing through life? How many mornings felt exactly the same? When was the last time I actually felt alive? Funny thing is, some people live alone and still feel peaceful inside. And some people sit in crowded houses with children and grandchildren around them and still feel empty in a way they cannot describe. That hollow feeling, that quiet exhaustion in the soul. That is the real fear of getting older. Not wrinkles, not gray hair. It is realizing your spirit has been tired for years and you were too busy surviving to notice it. And for a lot of people, by the time they finally see it clearly, most of life is already behind them. Some people do not become lonely all at once. It happens quietly. So quietly, they keep living their normal life for years without realizing something inside them has slowly gone dim. There is a woman in California living with her son, his wife, and 2 loud grandchildren. The house is never really quiet. Somebody is always running through the hallway. The TV plays cartoons in the living room. Pots clang in the kitchen around dinner time. Phones ring. Doors open and shut. From the outside, it looks warm, full of life. But nobody really sits down and talks to her anymore. Her family loves her, sure, at least in the way modern families think they do. They pick up her prescriptions. They remind her to wear a sweater outside. They ask if she already ate lunch. But nobody asks what has been on her mind lately. Nobody asks if she still misses dancing. Nobody asks why she stares out the same kitchen window every afternoon around 4 o'clock. Truth is, she's not looking at anything special. She just misses feeling included in the world. Then there is a man in Texas who lost his wife after 43 years together. Every night used to end the same way. She would make tea. He would lock the back door. Little routines. Tiny things people barely notice until they disappear. Now the kitchen feels unbearably still. Some mornings he still reaches for 2 mugs without thinking. Grief does that to people. The body remembers before the mind catches up. And honestly, some of the saddest people are the ones who spent their whole life being responsible. The mothers who raised children nonstop for 30 years. The men who worked double shifts until their knees gave out. People who kept saying, "We'll finally relax after retirement." Then retirement actually came, and without work, without responsibility, they did not even recognize themselves anymore. Some had money, too. Big homes, nice cars, savings accounts that looked impressive on paper. Still lonely. Because people visited when they needed help, needed advice, needed checks signed, not because they genuinely wanted to sit beside them. That kind of loneliness cuts deep. It is strange, really. You can be surrounded by noise and still feel forgotten. And maybe that is the hardest sentence a person can whisper in old age. Not, "I'm alone," but I don't think anybody really knows me anymore. People can survive a lot more than we think they can. Seriously, human beings survive funerals, heartbreak, cancer, debt, betrayal. They survive wars and lonely marriages and years of stress that should have broken them completely. But there is one thing that quietly wears people down from the inside: feeling like they are no longer needed. That feeling changes people. You see it all the time after retirement. A man works 40 years straight, waking up at 5:30 every morning without needing an alarm clock. He drives the same route to work for decades, pays bills, fixes problems, handles emergencies, keeps the family standing. Then, one day, it all stops. No meetings, no schedule, no one calling his name because something needs to be done. And at first, it sounds relaxing, peaceful even. But after a while, the mornings start feeling strange, heavy. There are older people who still wake up before sunrise out of habit, then just sit quietly at the edge of the bed, wondering what they are supposed to do with themselves now. Their body still remembers responsibility, but life stopped asking anything from them. That kind of emptiness is dangerous in ways people do not talk about enough, because loneliness is not always about being physically alone. A person can sit on a porch drinking coffee by themselves and feel completely at peace. Another person can sit in a crowded house during Thanksgiving dinner and feel invisible the entire night. Big difference. One still feels connected to life, the other does not. That is why purpose matters so much, especially as people get older. Some older folks keep going because they still have something pulling them forward. Maybe they grow tomatoes in the backyard. Maybe they volunteer at church. Maybe they pick up their grandkids from school twice a week. Tiny things, but those little routines give the day meaning. Others slowly fade into repetition. Wake up, watch television, microwave dinner, sleep. Then do it all again tomorrow. No excitement, nothing to look forward to, no reason to get emotionally dressed for the day. And honestly, when the spirit gets tired long enough, the body often follows behind it. That is the part people rarely understand about aging. The real danger is not living alone. It is slowly losing your connection to life itself. It is forgetting why tomorrow should matter at all. Sometimes people think healing has to arrive like a movie scene, big breakthrough, big speech, big moment. Most of the time, it does not happen like that at all. Sometimes it starts with something as small as opening the curtains after weeks of keeping the house dark. There was an older woman in Oregon who began taking walks after her husband died. At first, she was not trying to improve herself or start a new chapter. Honestly, she just could not stand the silence in the house anymore. The kind of silence where you can hear every cabinet door close. So she walked, 10 minutes at first, then a little longer. After a few months, she started recognizing people at the park: a retired mailman with white sneakers, a woman who lost her husband years earlier, an older man who sat near the lake feeding birds every morning like clockwork. Nobody changed her life overnight. It was smaller than that. Tiny conversations, little nods. Cold morning today. Good to see you again. Funny how those simple moments can keep a person emotionally alive. A lot of older people secretly wait for someone to come save them from loneliness. But peace usually begins much quieter than that. It begins when they slowly return to themselves. Cooking real food again instead of heating frozen dinners, watering plants, reading before bed, writing old memories down so life does not feel like it disappeared too fast, even calling somebody first instead of waiting by the phone. Little things. But little things become huge when life has gone emotionally quiet. There is also something comforting about routine as people get older. Making tea slowly in the morning, sitting near a window while it rains, saying a prayer before bed. Those habits steady the heart more than people realize. A retired man in Florida once said volunteering at the local library twice a week probably saved him, not because the job mattered that much, because somebody noticed when he did not show up. That feeling matters deeply. People need to feel expected somewhere, needed somewhere. And maybe the hardest lesson in life is learning how to enjoy your own company, too. Because children grow busy, friends move away. Everything changes eventually. But if a person can sit quietly with themselves and still feel a little peace inside, getting older does not seem nearly as frightening anymore. Mr. Thomas worked in a steel factory in Pennsylvania for 40 years. 40 years is a long time to breathe in dust, hear machines banging all day, and come home too tired to talk much. He was the kind of man who left the house before sunrise, lunchbox in one hand, work boots by the door. In winter, he drove through snow before the roads were even cleared. He missed birthdays sometimes, missed school plays, put off vacations, ignored the tight feeling in his chest more than once. Not because he did not care, because in his mind, that was care. That was love. You provide, you endure, you keep going. When he finally retired, everyone said the usual things. Now you can relax. You deserve it. Enjoy yourself. And for a little while, he tried to believe them. The first months were quiet, but not terrible. He slept late, fixed small things around the house, drank coffee slowly. Then life shifted. His children had their own homes, their own bills, their own busy calendars. Then his wife died suddenly from a stroke. And just like that, the man who had carried a whole family on his back no longer knew what to do with his mornings. He started sitting by the front window for hours. Cars passed, neighbors walked dogs, kids rode bikes. Life kept moving, but somehow it no longer asked him to join. Weeks became months. He stopped shaving every day, stopped cooking real meals, let the phone ring. Then one afternoon, a boy from down the street knocked on his door. He needed help with homework. His mother worked 2 jobs and could not always be home. Mr. Thomas almost said no, but he let him in. Then another child came. Then another. Before long, every Tuesday and Thursday, children sat around his dining table with notebooks, pencils, math problems, and noisy little questions. The house changed. It had voices again. One evening, after they left, Mr. Thomas stood in the kitchen and cried quietly. Not because he was broken, because something in him had come back. He felt useful, needed, alive. Maybe purpose does not leave us when we get old. Maybe it just knocks on the door in a different form. There is something nurses and caregivers see over and over again near the end of a person's life. And honestly, it is heartbreaking. People lying in hospital beds rarely talk about money. They do not sit there thinking about promotions from 20 years ago. They do not care who won arguments. Nobody whispers proudly about how many overtime hours they worked. What comes back to them are moments, very ordinary moments. A father suddenly remembers all the dinners he missed because he stayed late at the office again. A woman admits she spent decades in a marriage that felt empty because she was too afraid to start over. An old man once said, barely above a whisper, "I spent most of my life trying to impress people who would not have shown up for me anyway." That kind of regret sounds different when it comes from someone near the end. Heavier, because when people get older, time stops feeling abstract. They can feel it running out. Young people talk like life goes on forever. Older people know better. They understand a single peaceful year is worth more than 10 rushed ones. And maybe the saddest thing is this. A lot of people spend their healthiest years chasing things that never truly mattered to the heart. More money, more status, more approval. Then one day they realize the moments they actually miss are painfully simple. Drinking coffee with somebody they loved, hearing laughter in the kitchen, holding someone's hand during a difficult season, being understood without having to explain everything. That becomes priceless later in life. Not luxury cars, not giant houses. You know, there are elderly people sleeping in beautiful homes who cry themselves awake at night. And there are others living in tiny apartments who feel deeply blessed because somebody still calls just to hear their voice. A former businessman in hospice care once admitted, "I thought money would make me feel secure, but I would trade all of it right now for one more year with the people I neglected." That sentence stays with you, because deep down, most people already know this truth while they are still young. They just keep postponing life anyway. We'll slow down later. We'll spend more time together later. We'll finally enjoy life after retirement. But later has a cruel habit of not arriving the way people expect. Bodies get tired. Friends disappear. The house grows quieter every year. And eventually, memories matter more than accomplishments ever did. Sometimes that realization breaks a person. Sometimes, if they are lucky, it wakes them up in time. There is something about getting older that makes people think about God differently. Maybe because when the body slows down, the noise of life finally does too. And in that quiet, deeper questions start showing up. Not the kind people ask at parties or business meetings. Real questions. Did I love people well? Did my life actually matter to somebody? Was I kind when I had the chance? And when everything is stripped away, was I ever truly alone? A lot of older people feel forgotten by the world. You can see it sometimes in their eyes. Society moves fast now. Everything celebrates youth, energy, beauty, productivity. If you are no longer useful, people stop paying attention. That hurts. But maybe God never looked at people the way the world does. Gray hair does not reduce a person's value. A tired body does not make a soul less important. If anything, old age has a strange way of peeling away what was fake all along. Pride starts mattering less. Appearances matter less. People stop pretending as much. And underneath all that, the things that remain are usually simple: kindness, faith, forgiveness, mercy, love. There is comfort in believing that even when people drift away, God still sees every quiet moment, every lonely dinner, every tear nobody else noticed. Some elderly people finally find peace when they stop fighting time so hard. They stop wishing they were 40 again, stop comparing themselves to younger versions of who they used to be. They begin accepting life in seasons. Morning has its beauty, but evening does too. Evening is softer, slower, more honest somehow. I once heard a pastor say, "The last chapter of life was never supposed to be louder. It was supposed to be deeper." That stayed with me, because maybe aging is not only about losing things. Maybe it is also an invitation, a chance to slow down enough to hear your own soul again, a chance to let go of old anger, to forgive people who hurt you years ago, to sit quietly with God without rushing anywhere. And maybe that is why some older people live alone and still seem deeply peaceful. Their homes may be quiet, but inside they are no longer empty. So maybe growing old alone is not the thing people should fear most. Maybe the real tragedy is getting to the final stretch of life and realizing you spent decades being busy, but never really present. Never slowing down enough to enjoy anything. Never saying what needed to be said. Never letting yourself love people fully because there was always work, stress, bills, responsibilities, another tomorrow that seemed guaranteed. That is the part that hurts, not the wrinkles, not the slower walk. It is the feeling that life kept passing by while you were distracted trying to survive it. And honestly, maybe that is why this video found you tonight. Maybe something inside you is already tired of postponing your own life. A lot of regrets do not arrive all at once. They build quietly. Missed phone calls, delayed visits, another year saying, "I'll make time later." Then, suddenly, parents get older, friends drift away. The people you thought would always be there are not there anymore. So maybe call somebody after this video ends. Call your mother. Talk to your brother. Sit with your spouse without staring at a screen the whole time. Even 10 quiet minutes alone with your own thoughts can change something inside you. Ask yourself honestly, what kind of life am I creating for myself? Not just financially, emotionally, too. Spiritually, too. Because one day, the house probably will get quieter. Schedules slow down eventually. The body changes. That part is unavoidable. But if a person filled their years with real connection, real love, real moments that mattered, aging feels different somehow. Softer, less frightening, almost complete. And maybe the richest people at the end of life are not the ones who made the most money. Maybe they are the ones who can close their eyes knowing they were truly loved by somebody, knowing somewhere, in somebody's memory, their name is still spoken with warmth.